Alright everyone, it's time to explain to the economically less literate why canceling student loan debt is a terrible idea. It wouldn't collapse the economy, but it would cause plenty of problems. Also, I'd like to point this out. Joe Biden's idea of just canceling 10 grand in student debt for a lot of people in society arguably is worse than just canceling it all. Now, what do I propose? I propose that the government needs to get out of the educational system so that the cost deflates. That's what I believe. A person back in the 1950s, this is even admitted to by the leftists, back in that horrible time of the 50s with capitalism and early atomic era imperialism, the average person from the working class, if they were intelligent, could work a summer job and pay for their tuition. That's the way that it was for the baby boomers through the 60s. Then the war on poverty began. The government started pumping more money into the educational system, and the problem is that what they expected was that people who were smart from the lower echelons, they'd be able to go to college. What ended up happening instead was that those people got even more fucked because now instead of them toiling in order to pay tuition, now there was no way for them to pay it. Now they would just take out at interest student loans that the government helped to write off and subsidize. Most of them, by the way, still not subsidized, or only then for a short period of time before the interest starts creeping in. Basically, even if you're very intelligent, if you get yourself into that situation because you're being held back by those monthly payments, it's really difficult for there to be upward mobility unless you started off in the privileged economic classes. If you're in the upper middle class, your parents are both master's degree dentists or something, it's pretty easy. Yeah, you have to pay a lot of tuition, but, then you inherit the family practice. You become, my grandparents were dentists. My great-grandparents were dentists. Take a fucking look at my incisors and you can tell. Here's the problem. Here's the effect. We have to look at the three main echelons of society, which are the working class. We're not counting the truly destitute here. The working class, the solid middle class, and what I would consider the upper middle class. People, again, professionals and stuff like that. Like you're making a high five-figure, low six-figure salary or something. You've got your cage is gilded. Your slavery is a little bit more tolerable. You can eat something. You can eat the store brand cereal. Let's look at what will actually happen under the proposal of canceling student loan debt. If you are in the upper middle class, if you're kind of making it, you've just had your debt written off despite the fact that you're already capable of making payments. Number one, you've just lost a way to build credit. Student loans, despite complaints about interest, tend to be considerably less interest-driven than things like cars, many mortgages, certainly credit cards, which you should never use for any purpose other than getting a basic one, buying a candy bar each month, and then paying off the rate. That's how you build credit. Don't ever get a credit card and say, well, I've got a $50,000 limit, I guess. I can go and buy a car. You're crazy if you're doing that. Ride your junker around and fucking make do. That's my advice. Restrain your spending whenever possible. By the way, the government doesn't want you to do that because it gets to tax every transaction that you make. That's why they love it when you get into debt. No, they don't care as long as the payments are being made. So for the upper middle class, you've lost a way to build credit. There's one less fairly simple way to build it. You haven't gotten any benefit either because you're already being taxed at a reasonable rate, especially, trust me, if you're self-employed and you're kind of in the upper echelon of the middle class. I know this from experience. You get hammered. You get abused. You pay the same tax rate as someone who makes like $500,000 fucking dollars a year. It's literally insane, just so you know. Now you're just paying more every month in taxes. You're going to have to say all the money that you would be saving in the student loan debt, whether under Biden's plan or not, now goes to Uncle Sam. It's just the government appropriating the same resources that used to be a private company that held them. Now let's look at the middle class. The middle class, they have also lost an opportunity for credit building. They've at best broken even. Because now they're not making that payment, but they're paying to the government as well. And of course, they get taxed as well up the ass. The upper middle class pays more each month now than it did before. The middle class at least hasn't gotten any benefit, and now they're perpetually paying that money to the state instead for having written off the student loan debt. The only way in which they're not going to pay more taxes, by the way, Biden is flat out lying when he says there'll be no new taxes on anyone making less than, $200K a year. Bullshit, because you'd be fiscally insolvent. The only other opportunity is to inflate the currency, print more funny money, and then the middle classers, and especially the upper middle class that generally have some savings, those savings have depreciated because the dollar is worth less. Also, it'll cause more employment. You do realize how many people are employed in the student loan industry. Hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people will find themselves jobless. That's not very nice. Those people, by the way, now have to be subsidized by the government, aka by the taxpayers that still have jobs. Keep in mind, during a recession with near double-digit unemployment at the moment, our economy right now is fractured. If you're in the working class, you're still not well off, because if you do manage to amalgamate any savings again, they're going to be used for a base existence. If I'm making $2,500 a month or something, I'm getting by, kind of. I'm not totally destitute, but really I'm one missed paycheck away from being on the streets. That's basically what it means to be a working classer. Oh, if I have a coronary, my whole family will be fucked in the ass. That's what happens. If I'm saving $300-400 a month that I would otherwise be paying in student loans, I went to college, I got my associates or whatever, now I'm paying $300-400 extra a month. Even if the government's not raising my taxes, which it won't, and I'm saving that money, am I really going to invest that in the broader economy? No, it's only a few $100s a month. This just means that my kid can have Count Chocula instead of Walmart brand Count Crapula. That's the only difference. It means nothing to the overall economy. When Biden and these people, when Elizabeth Warren sits there and says, well, this will stimulate the economy because people have more money, they'll be able to invest. No, they won't invest. The upper middle classers that would have enough money potentially to invest haven't saved anything. They're probably paying more, in between inflation and new taxes, they're paying more than they were paying to the student loan company, generally speaking. The reason why, and then the middle class, they've broken even. Well, their purchasing power hasn't changed. The working class now has a little more purchasing power, and certainly people who are destitute but intelligent, that's great. The problem is that they're already barely making ends meet, and then sometimes not even that. They're taking out fucking payday loans and shit. Going to a loan shark service. Well, if that's the case, they're not. The fact that you've given them a couple $100s a month more of their own money is not saving them so much that it's going to be invested in the broader economy. Especially in economic times like these when a lot of these people are unemployed or half employed at the moment. They're working several part-time jobs. There's no such thing as a full-time job anymore that's not a salaried position anyway, because companies sought to avoid, under Obamacare, having to contribute to their employees' healthcare plans. So they dropped them from 40 to 38 hours and said, well, you're no longer a full-time worker. We don't have to pay in. That's what they did. By the way, they tried to shore that up, and it was a terrible idea. They would have dropped them to 35 hours a week or something. So basically, you've done nothing for the economy. When they say it'll stimulate it, no, it won't. Because the people that it's actually helping are so low in the economic echelons that 90% of them, they're just going to buy a Hershey bar. They'll buy, a better gun to kill themselves with the next time the economy collapses due to far leftism and they lose their job again. They'll be able to buy a little bit better. They'll be able to buy mid-shelf booze to drown their problems away. They don't have enough money to invest. What kind of person, unless you're making at least a solid median income, do you really have the money to invest in anything substantial? No, if you're saving it all, it's a minuscule amount and you're keeping it in an account. Or investing it in something like you have, Dogecoin or something. You're not investing it. What are you going to invest in? You're going to buy a yacht? You gonna buy into a business? Play around with the stock market? Hell, the elites don't even want people to be able to own stocks now. They're openly colluding to prevent the little people from gaining any form of upward mobility now that they've found out that there's a formulaic way they can screw hedge funds and parasitize the money back that's being parasitized out of the stock market on the backs of dying businesses. Now, isn't that fucking funny? Yeah, these people, they're going to, canceling 10 grand's even worse because most of the people will still be making those payments and they're paying more taxes. Under Biden's plan, the middle class actually, instead of the upper middle class, does worse. The solid middle class, which is many tens of millions of people, get hammered. Those which don't rise up a little bit because of the incremental increase in the take-home pay will fall down a level. They'll be in the lower middle class, which sort of exists as a thing too. Lower middle class. You're not one paycheck away from poverty. You're 3 paychecks away from poverty. Woohoo! Yeah, guess what? You get to pay more taxes because Uncle Sam needs to go bomb some fucking people overseas. That's about all. Peace out.